and his Holiness looked very deeply into me, and he just started laughing. And I have thought about this moment, I can't tell you how many thousands of times over the last 30 years. But of course what he was saying to me was, here I am, this creature who imagines emotions. I imagine a narrative. I imagine a universe. I imagine feeling things. And I believe, on some level, that I'm actually feeling them, although I just conjured them up myself. And of course the world functions exactly the same way. We've all living an enchanted life. The enchantment is we've created this universe of emotions. Positive, negative, all these things happen. And we believe they're actually real. Now what an extraordinary lesson in creativity I was given in my very first 5 minutes with this Holiness.
In fact, Richard, you referred to the Tibetan Vajrayana practice, and Vajrayana practice speaks of what is called the yoga, imaginative level yoga, or we call it the generation stage or creation stage yoga, and then uncreated or spontaneous level of yoga. So there is a role for imagination as well. So what this suggests is that through deliberate cultivation, you can reach to an kind of effortless, non-simulated kind of spontaneity.
I'd like to second that emotion. Because what I found when I started meditating regularly, and it was just the most astonishing thing to me, I found that entire worlds, that some of them actually became my fictional worlds, developed spontaneously. And they came with all of their emotion, all of their imaginative qualities. They came complete. And I had friends, I have a wonderful friend and teacher, Jack Cornfield, in California, who said, well, those are just stages. And you actually go through them and you get somewhere else. And to some degree that's true, but I said to him then, I said, well, perhaps they were stages, but I've certainly written a lot of good novels out of them. So I think that is very true, that there is a way in which, in the purity and the clarity of sitting, there arises this ability to spontaneously feel very deeply and very, very sweetly in a way, the emotions that arise. And even though you don't cling to them, as you know, the meditators in the audience, you don't cling to them or try to keep them in any way. It is refreshing to have that spontaneity of emotion and of insight.
There is a line in Shantidev's text which says that through cultivation of familiarity, there is nothing that they wouldn't become easier. So it shows that how the mind can change, thoughts can change. Also, in the Buddhist tradition, we make distinctions between qualities that are very heavily contingent upon the body and qualities that are more of mental nature. And example, like athletic prowess, these kind of qualities, because they are heavily contingent upon the body, unless you keep repeatedly, practiced, these are qualities that at some point you will lose. Whereas the mental qualities, once you reach a certain stage, and they have a certain kind of optimal qualities, you don't need to consciously keep at it. At some point, it becomes effortless.
这代表是不是这些印度人是不是会这些？
By the way, these are things that probably brain researchers, neuroscientists should take a look at.
对的，这全是脑里啊，多方面要求。
Another thing that I noticed is that in kind of neuroscience, when they're looking at mental processes, they don't seem to make distinction between sensory experiences on the one hand and thoughts and these mental processes which are, more mental rather than sensory. Similarly, they don't seem to be able to make distinctions at the brain level between an illusory experience and a veridical experience, a true experience.
这是什么 realistic view, unrealistic view, 相当难讲。它在外头也很奇怪是。
So, for example, a view that is more in tune with reality, a view that is less in tune with reality from the perspective of an experience that is a bit different, but at the level of brain, somehow at this point there seems to be no distinction.
There's another question that might be one for us to dive into. What role do you think the ego plays in art? Is it beneficial or detrimental? But I can say the same about Buddhist practice. What is a healthy ego that can create art, but also creates good practice and genuine experiences?
Well, I think the ego has a role. I think that what is required is that it be strong for itself and for good. And so you do have to have that sense of, if I have prepared myself well enough, if I have meditated, I have taken my walks, I have expressed my kindness, and I have been as good as I possibly could be, then of course I can do this. And so that is the role of the ego that I think is very fruitful and helpful.
对，这个，然后这面对上问题，
It's very true because in fact at the fundamental level, if you don't have a sense of I am, the thought of me, and also that I can, then there wouldn't be much movement to begin with.
要求，然后这个 equistic, I say, the sense of strong self is necessary in order to carry the serious practice, in order to serve others. You need that kind of self-confidence, willpower. All these sort of forces, mental forces, based upon the sense of strong self. But then, another sense of strong self, which create picture, intuition, I and they. And then, in order to gain some benefit to that I, there's no hesitation to harm other, cheating other, bully other. That sense of strong self is negative. So, no correct and good look at all. 就凝结的结的，对，好， mentally 대리 너무 거라는 때문에 셰프가 나는 것이.
So His Holiness is wondering whether we can actually make distinctions from the nature of the ego itself, or whether it is more of a function of other accompanying mental, kind of qualities, such as if the ego is accompanied or rooted in kind of a wider perspective that includes values like compassion, caring for others, then that would be seen as positive. But if the ego is contextualized within a framework which is completely, self-centered, full of conceit, then it will be destructive. So he's wondering whether we can make this distinction purely from the nature of ego itself, or whether it's more a function of the other factors that are part of that ego.
Desire, for example, the feeling of desire something positive, that desire is right. Without that, no effort. So desire or harm that desire is wrong. Or then we need, of course, mentally we can say, we can make distinction, attachment and desire, attachment, compassion, affection. In brain level, I don't know. So no clear what's the finding. I think it really worthwhile. Someone that let her develop strong attachment towards their own relative. That during that moment, what movement and what role of the brain. Then those practitioners who train the person towards one enemy or his or her enemy, visualize, and then through reasoning develop genuine compassion. So there, no attachment. There the loving kindness of compassion is genuine compassion, unbiased. So mentally, big differences. And I think even the feeling level, the previous one, some kind of say, he yourself, not fully self-control soul, which is marrying switch. That's it. American totally chapel. Susan actually conscious. Since I think less of independence, the strong attachment leads to you. This is what the later one, unbiased genuine compassion, I think on the basis of strong sense of strong self and full self-confidence and voluntarily take concern of my enemy's well-being. So as far as attachment is concerned, because he or she created a problem, so conventionally considered an enemy. So no basis of development of attachment. But through training, through awareness, this is the genuine sense of concern of the perpetrator. So mentally, big differences. The reaction of the brain, I think eventually we can examine these things, investigate these things. Something very interesting. So I'm just waiting.